Elena Matthews adjusted the strap of her satchel as she hurried through the bustling streets of downtown Chicago. The winter wind bit at her cheeks, but her mind was elsewhere, on the stack of books she had to grade and the late shift at the bookstore that awaited her. Inside the warm cafe near Michigan Avenue, she ordered her usual latte. As she turned, distracted, the cup slipped from her hand and splashed across a stranger's neat stack of case notes. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she gasped, reaching for napkins. The man laughed, brushing droplets off his sleeve. "It's all right. Coffee adds character to legal briefs." His voice carried an amused calm. That was how Elena met Ryan Carter, a law student at the University of Chicago. His smile disarmed her, and before she knew it, they were sitting at the same table, sipping coffee and sharing stories about their studies. Hours slipped by unnoticed. When they finally parted, Elena felt a strange tug in her chest, as though she had stumbled onto something that might matter. Their friendship quickly blossomed into romance. Ryan had a confidence Elena admired, and she loved how he listened when she rambled about literature. He often walked her home along Lake Michigan, the city lights shimmering on the water like scattered jewels. By spring, their relationship was sealed with late-night walks, inside jokes, and promises whispered under the stars. Elena believed she had found the man she had been waiting for. 2 years later, Ryan whisked her away to New Orleans as a surprise. They wandered hand in hand through the French Quarter, soaking in the music, the art, and the irresistible smell of beignets. On one warm night, with jazz floating through the air, Ryan held her close and murmured, "You're my forever, Elena." She closed her eyes, letting the words sink deep into her heart. She believed him more than she had believed anyone before. After graduation, Ryan landed a job at a prestigious law firm in New York City. Elena followed, eager to build a new chapter together. She secured a teaching job at a high school in Brooklyn, determined to make their shared dream a reality. Life in Manhattan was fast and dazzling. They had a tiny apartment in the Upper West Side with a leaky sink and a breathtaking view of Central Park. For a while, it felt like magic, but soon cracks began to form. Ryan's hours stretched later into the night. His phone buzzed constantly with messages he never explained, and his eyes seemed distant. Elena told herself it was the demands of his career. "He's just tired," she whispered into her pillow at night. Yet doubts gnawed at her. The warmth that once came so easily seemed to fade with every unanswered text. One evening, she kissed his cheek as he walked through the door. Her nose caught a faint scent of perfume, sweet and floral, nothing like hers. She froze. "New cologne?" she asked lightly. Ryan hesitated. "Client dinner," he said too quickly. Elena smiled, but her stomach twisted into knots. The real betrayal revealed itself months later. Elena was in Los Angeles for a teachers' conference when her phone buzzed with a notification. Out of habit, she opened Instagram. Her heart stopped. There was Ryan tagged at a rooftop bar in Manhattan, his arm draped around a woman she had never seen before, his smile brighter than it had been in months. The caption read, "Best night with the best man." The world spun. She sat down on the edge of the hotel bed, staring at the screen until the image blurred. A hollow ache opened in her chest, swallowing everything she thought she knew. When Ryan called that night, his voice was casual, as though nothing was amiss. Elena swallowed her pain and answered in clipped tones, her mind replaying the picture again and again. After the conference, she didn't return to New York right away. Instead, she booked a flight to Savannah, Georgia, where her grandmother lived. She needed the calm, the familiarity of Spanish moss and slow afternoons. Her grandmother listened as Elena spilled everything. Tears streaked down her face. "I gave him everything, Grandma, and he gave himself to someone else." Days later, Ryan flew to Savannah, insisting they talk. They met in Forsyth Park under the shade of the oak trees, the sound of children's laughter echoing around them. "Elena, please," Ryan said, reaching for her hands. His eyes looked desperate. It was a mistake. I love you. I don't want to lose you. She pulled her hands back. Love doesn't betray. Love doesn't hide. For the first time, she saw him not as the man she fell for, but as the stranger who had torn her trust apart. The conversation stretched for hours. He begged. She cried. But in the end, the decision was clear. You chose her when you should have chosen us, Elena whispered, her voice trembling but firm. She stood and walked away, each step echoing against the cobblestones. She didn't look back. The months that followed were some of the hardest of Elena's life. Back in New York, she packed her things and left the apartment. Ryan texted and called, but she ignored every attempt. She felt both broken and strangely free. Nights were filled with loneliness, but also with a slow rediscovery of herself. When an opportunity arose to teach in Denver, Colorado, she accepted without hesitation. She wanted a fresh start, away from the city that held too many ghosts. Denver surprised her. The mountains stretched like ancient guardians on the horizon. The air felt cleaner, the pace slower. For the first time in years, she breathed without pain. She found a small apartment downtown and decorated it with thrift store finds, bright curtains, secondhand bookshelves, and plants she vowed not to kill this time. On weekends, she hiked the trails of the Rockies. At first, the silence scared her, but soon it became a companion. She whispered her anger to the trees, her grief to the wind, and let the mountains absorb her sorrow. One afternoon, while browsing a bookstore, she overheard a young woman sigh to her friend. I don't know if I'll ever get over him. Elena smiled sadly. She knew that feeling well, but she also knew healing was possible. Time stitched her heart back together slowly, thread by thread. Her students adored her. She poured her energy into teaching, into showing kids that words had power, that literature could be an escape and a mirror all at once. Occasionally, Ryan's memory crept in. The sound of jazz reminded her of New Orleans. A glance at Central Park on TV made her chest tighten. But those memories no longer had the power to break her. Instead, they reminded her of how far she had come. From brokenness to resilience, from betrayal to strength. She started writing a book, part memoir, part fiction, about a woman who lost everything only to discover herself in the ruins. Her evenings were quiet but fulfilling. She cooked simple meals, listened to vinyl records, and sometimes sat on her balcony watching the sun dip behind the mountains. Friends invited her out, and though she was hesitant at first, she began to say yes. Laughter returned to her life in pieces, like fragments of a song she once loved. One spring evening, a colleague introduced her to Daniel, a journalist new to Denver. He had kind eyes and a voice that carried warmth. They met for coffee, and she felt a spark, not fiery like with Ryan, but gentle, steady like a candle flame that refused to flicker out. As weeks turned into months, Daniel became a friend, then something more. He listened when she spoke, never pushing her to share more than she wanted. His respect built a foundation stronger than passion alone. With him, she didn't feel the need to pretend. She could be herself, scarred, healing, but whole. One evening, they hiked together to a mountain overlook. As the sky turned shades of gold and purple, Daniel asked softly, "Do you ever regret leaving New York?" Elena smiled faintly. "No, leaving was the bravest thing I ever did." He nodded, understanding without pressing. And in that moment, she realized trust could grow again, even after betrayal. For the first time in years, hope blossomed in her chest, fragile but real. Elena still thought about Ryan sometimes, but not with longing. Instead, she saw him as a chapter closed, a lesson learned the hardest way possible. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones meant to teach us who we really are. And now she knows. She was strong. She was enough. She was capable of building a future not defined by heartbreak, but by resilience. When autumn arrived, She stood outside her classroom watching golden leaves swirl across the schoolyard. She felt peace, a rare, hard-won peace that filled her with quiet joy. Love had broken her once, but betrayal had not destroyed her. Instead, it had carved out a space for something better to grow. And in Denver, with the mountains rising around her and the promise of new love at her side, Elena finally understood. Freedom was the greatest gift she had ever given herself. Her story wasn't about Ryan anymore. It was about her. Elena Matthews, the woman who walked away, healed, and built a life brighter than the one she lost. Elena's book began to take shape, each chapter reflecting the lessons she had wrestled with in silence. She didn't write to relive the pain, but to capture the strength she had gained. When she finally shared a few pages with Daniel, he read quietly, then looked up with tears in his eyes. "This will help someone who thinks they'll never get through it," he said. For the first time, Elena felt her story wasn't just about survival. It was about offering light to others lost in the dark. Her students noticed the change in her too. She smiled more often, laughed easily, and carried herself with a confidence that inspired them. "Miss Matthews," one girl said shyly after class, "you make me feel like I can get through anything." Elena's heart swelled. She had once doubted she could even get through her own heartbreak, and now she was helping others believe in themselves. One Saturday in October, Daniel surprised her with tickets to a jazz festival in downtown Denver. At first, the music tugged at old memories of New Orleans with Ryan, but as the horns and drums filled the crisp evening air, Elena realized something had shifted. Sitting beside Daniel, hand in hand, she wasn't haunted by the past anymore. Instead, she was making new memories, ones that felt fresh and free. Winter came, wrapping the city in snow. Elena and Daniel spent evenings curled up by her little thrift store Christmas tree, sipping cocoa and trading stories from their childhood. For Elena, it was the first holiday season in years that wasn't stained with regret. She realized love didn't have to be grand gestures or whispered promises under starlight. It could be quiet, steady, and safe. When spring returned, her book was finished. She titled it A Love Stained with Betrayal, A Life Rewritten. She wasn't sure what would come of it, but she sent it to a few publishers anyway. To her surprise, one called back, eager to print it. The day she held her first copy in her hands, Elena felt a wave of pride stronger than anything she had ever known. At the small launch party her colleagues arranged, her grandmother traveled from Savannah to be there. She hugged Elena tightly, whispering, "See, you didn't just survive, you bloomed." Elena smiled through tears, realizing how right her grandmother had been all along. That summer, Daniel invited her to join him on an assignment in Oregon, where he was covering a feature on coastal towns. Walking barefoot along Cannon Beach, Elena felt the waves crash at her feet and leaned into Daniel's shoulder. The sea breeze carried no shadows from the past, only promise. One evening on that trip, as the sun dipped into the horizon, Daniel turned to her, his eyes steady. "Elena," he said softly, "I don't need forever promises. I just want today, and every day after, with you. Will you let me?" Elena's chest tightened, not with fear, but with joy. She nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. Back in Denver, life unfolded gently. Her book reached readers who wrote her letters, saying her story gave them courage. Her classroom flourished with creativity. And in Daniel, she found not just love, but partnership, the kind built on honesty, respect, and kindness. Years later, as Elena stood before a crowd at a women's conference, she shared her journey. "Betrayal broke me," she said, her voice firm but warm. "But healing rebuilt me. And sometimes the life you dream of comes after the one you thought you needed falls apart." The audience rose in applause, but Elena's gaze found Daniel's in the crowd. He smiled, his eyes filled with pride. In that moment, Elena knew her story had finally found its happy ending, not because of who stood beside her, but because of the woman she had become. Thanks for watching.